Again, there is a certain other knowledge of God, higher than the premise, which is obtained of God by demonstration, by which one approaches more to his proper knowledge. Since by demonstration many things are removed from him, by the removal of which he is understood to be discrete from others. For the demonstration shows that God is immovable, eternal, incorporeal, absolutely simple, one and other such things as we have shown in the first book about God. But the proper knowledge of a thing is arrived at not only by means of affirmations, but also by means of negations. For as it is proper to man to be a rational animal, so it is proper to him not to be inanimate or irrational. But this is the difference between the two modes of proper knowledge, that through affirmations of proper knowledge of a thing, one knows what a thing is, and how it is separated from others. But by means of negations held by one's own knowledge of the matter, it is known that it is discrete from others. Yet what it is remains unknown. But such is the proper knowledge which we have of God through demonstrations. But neither is this sufficient for the ultimate happiness of man. For those things which are of a particular species reach the end of that species as in the majority. For those which are by nature are always or in the majority, but fail in the minority because of some corruption. But happiness is the end of the human species, since all men naturally desire it. Happiness, then, is a kind of common good which is possible for all men, unless an obstacle happens to some by which they are blinded. Few, however, arrive at having the aforesaid knowledge of God by way of demonstration, because of the obstacles to this knowledge which we touched upon at the beginning of the book. Therefore, this knowledge of God is not essentially human happiness itself. Still, being in act is the end of existing in potential, as is clear from the premises. Happiness, therefore, which is the last end, is an act to which no power is attached to a further act. But such knowledge, held by the way of demonstration about God, still remains in the potential to know something further about God, or the same in a more noble way. Therefore, such knowledge is not the ultimate human happiness. Further, happiness excludes all misery, for no one can be miserable and happy at the same time. But deception and error are a great part of misery, for this is what all naturally flee from. But to the aforesaid knowledge which we have of God, a manifold error may be added, which is evident in many who have known some truths about God by way of demonstration, who, following their estimations while demonstration was wanting to them, have fallen into manifold errors. Now, if there were some who thus found the truth about the gods by way of demonstration, that no falsity was added to their estimation, it is clear that they were very few, which is not consistent with happiness, which is the common end. Therefore, man's ultimate happiness is not in this knowledge of God. In addition, happiness consists in perfect action. But for the perfection of knowledge, certainty is required. Hence we are not said to know otherwise, unless we know that it is impossible to have otherwise, as is clear in the first chapter. The aforesaid knowledge has a great deal of uncertainty, which is shown by the diversity of opinions concerning the divine of those who have tried to find these things by way of demonstration. Therefore, the ultimate happiness does not lie in such a knowledge. Again, when the will has attained its ultimate end, its longing ceases. But the ultimate goal of all human knowledge is happiness. That knowledge of God, therefore, is essentially happiness itself, by which there will be no knowledge of something knowable to be desired. But it is not such a knowledge as the philosophers were able to have about God through demonstrations. Because still, having that knowledge, we desire to know other things which are not yet known through this knowledge. Therefore, there is no happiness in such a knowledge of God. still, the end of every existing thing is in the potential to be brought into action, for it tends to this by the movement by which it is moved to the end. Now every being tends in potentiality to what it actually is, according to what is possible. For there is something existing in potential, the whole potential of which can be reduced into act. Hence the end of this is to be reduced completely into act, just as the heavy existing outside the medium is in potential to the proper where. But something whose whole power cannot be brought into action at the same time, as is clear from primary matter, whence by its own motion it desires to come forth successively into the act of different forms which, because of their diversity, cannot exist at the same time. Now our understanding has power over all intelligible things, as was said in the second chapter. Now two intelligibles can exist together in the possible understanding according to the first act, which is knowledge, although perhaps not according to the second act, which is consideration. From this it is clear that all the possible power of the intellect can be brought into action at the same time. This, therefore, is required for its ultimate end, which is happiness. But the aforesaid knowledge which can be had of God by demonstration does not do this, because having it, we still do not know much. Therefore, such a knowledge of God is not sufficient for ultimate happiness.